On tags advising that the subject is going to be armed and there were shots fired.
Three Wichita.
Forest Hill County. Y'all got any update out there coming out of my tag?
Affirmative. Cut up. Trooper button.
He just fired at the deputy. Just fired at the deputy. Check on your deputy. Just fired at it. Hit the car. Just fired.
Approaching navigator.
Wise County. He's fired at the deputy. He's also fired at me. Shots are fired.
Where are you? Where are you?
South of the navigator, southbound. He's shooting out the driver's window in the occupant.
10-4.
Then approaching Dub Johnson Arena. Shots fired at deputies.
I don't think I'm bad though. I'm still 17 southbound.
There, all units. He's reloading. He's reloading right now.
Received 26.
South of the county, south of the roadside park is stopping.
On take 5. Correction. Wise County advised. He has reloaded his weapon.
I'll be reloading.
10-4 South County. Go ahead and contact Decatur PD in case you make it into Decatur. Advise them what's going on.
1047. Counter received 55, show you around. On 70, go ahead.
Y'all at 9.
Update on location.
Roadside Park, County. We're coming to the Roadside Park.
Receive all units approaching Roadside Park.
Bound out of Decatur now.
Southbound, cross the roadside park at this time, Wise County. Southbound, cross the roadside park.
County copy, southbound, passing Roadside Park. Decatur's been notified.
County, I'm second unit in the chase now. I'm with the trooper. We are southbound, still southbound.
Bound 16, second unit.
County, you more units are coming in as northbound. These to set up south. We're coming to Decatur.
Copy, northbound units, y'all copy direct. You'll need to set up, approaching Decatur.
Southbound into Decatur now.
Units need to stay back away from him. He'll shoot at you. Shots fired at the Decatur unit, County.
County copy. Northbound units, y'all copy direct. Shots fired. So, try not to approach it.
All the assault for you. 47, County. The Rangers at the office up there. I'll see if you get over there.
Which off? Can you see if you can get a helicopter up? Vehicle shooting at units. Shooting at all units approaching.
See, good up all officers, 1036, 1033.
Southbound, 100 miles an hour.
Basically, congestion in traffic. We're coming up on 1810 right now.
Be approaching 1810.
And stay off the road. He will shoot at you.
287.
Cool is it?
I believe he just blew a tire or something, County. There's smoke coming from the vehicle very bad.
We copy, possibly blown tire.
Still southbound in front of Donald's Ace at this time.
Copy, passing Don Jose, southbound.
Downtown Decatur, about as fast as 51.
The exit at McDonald's here.
You taking 51 exit?
It's almost PA County. He's turning south on. He's going south on 287. Correction, 380. 380.
And he's going east or west on 380?
Business 380.
Walking on each other.
West 380 in front of Lowe's.
We copy west 380 in front of Lowe's.
And 2K falling at this time. Still high rate of speed, 80 miles an hour.
With the
Pass, approaching 2K.
contact plus.
We've also notified Bridgeport.
Clearly Decatur. Still shooting.
Did you copy that west traffic?
Fleet, major accident.
Hey, fleet.
All 1578 vehicle stopped.
400. Roll, medics. At this time.
16, medic 1 is staged behind one of the vehicles on business 380.
He's down. Shots fired. He's down.
County copy, shots fired, suspect down.
Shots have been fired. Suspect is down.
7 News reporter Amanda Koss looking into Ebel's criminal past. And Amanda, you've confirmed his links to a white supremacist prison gang called the 211 Crew.
And Teresa, our sources confirming that he was recruited into that violent prison gang while serving time. 7 News obtaining these court documents detailing his criminal history dating back to 2003. And this is a mugshot from when he was locked up, pulled a gun, and demanded cash, stealing wallets from a group watching a Broncos game in a Lakewood home. And in 2004 in Adams County, he tried to kick in someone's front door with his gun in hand, demanding items inside that home. And now take a look at a current mugshot of him. More trouble in prison. In 2007, while serving time, he punched a prison guard in the face, and for that he was sentenced to 4 years. Now he's serving his parole. He was serving it in Denver, and he was eligible for that to be up in December of 2015. Now also, court documents revealed that in 2004, the same year that his sister passed away in that January, in June of 2004, he shot himself twice, once in the stomach and once in the leg. Reporting live, Amanda Kost, 7 News.
We continue team coverage with 7 News reporter Don Champion. And Don, he spent most of his prison time in solitary confinement.
John, it's a reality that apparently changed Evan forever. That word coming from his father, Jack. 7 News obtained an audio recording from Jack Ebel's March 2011 testimony before Senate committee at the state capitol. Ebel was there supporting a bill that sets guidelines for prisoners in solitary confinement. Pictures show what must have been the good days of Evan Ebel's life, but after the smiles and during his prison term came deep concerns.
I'm a parent of a son who's been incarcerated for 6 years.
During Jack Ebel's 2011 testimony at the state capitol, he spoke about how his son had deteriorated after being held in solitary confinement for 5.5 of the 6 years he had spent in prison.
He has a high level of paranoia, extremely anxious. So when he gets out to visit me, and he gets out of his cell to talk to me, I mean, he's so agitated that it will take an hour to an hour and a half before we can actually talk.
Ebel went on to say it was a far cry from the well-read son he had raised.
So what I'm telling you is that if he had, and he may have had some mental conditions going in, they are exacerbated to the point of that I hardly recognize my son sometimes.
You can almost hear the desperation in his voice there, and now that bill ultimately was signed into law. ABC News spoke to friends of Evans who, after prison, described him as being depressed and on edge for years. One friend saying Evan was, quote, a dark person. Live in the newsroom, Don Champion.
Breaking news, an alert to find this man wanted in connection with the murder of Tom Clements.
Thomas Gooley, one of two men with ties to the 211 prison crew, on the run right now. 7 News reporter Marshall Zellinger with exclusive details on their connection to Evan Ebel.
Sources telling ABC News tonight the two men were in frequent contact with Evan Ebel after Ebel got out of prison, including by telephone 24 to 36 hours before the murder of Tom Clements.
Officer safety, bulletin, extreme caution. The Ross County Sheriff's Office and the Colorado Department of Corrections requesting all law enforcement agencies to be on the lookout for the following parties.
That bulletin warning authorities about this man, 31-year-old Thomas Goulet, also known as Ghost. This is his photo from the Department of Corrections. He's wanted in connection with the murder of Tom Clements at his Monument home. We checked his criminal history, which includes assault and intimidating witnesses. Another man is also wanted, but we don't have his photo. James Lohr is 47. He's known as Jimbo and may be in Nevada or Texas.
Those are known associates of the 211 crew, have shown violent tendencies and should be considered armed and dangerous.
Also tonight, we wanted to know more about that tamper alert on Evan Ebel's ankle monitor. It was tampered with for 4 days before a parole officer made contact with his family. The DOC telling me no one is checking on that officer's other parolees to make sure that they are where they are supposed to be. Reporting live, Marshall Zellinger, 7 News.
Now, the Call 7 investigators obtaining a letter written by Evan Ebel while behind bars. As Call 7 investigator Teresa Marchetta shows us, it underscores his hatred for corrections officers and his ties to white supremacy.
The 2.5-page letter riddled with expletives is handwritten by murder suspect Evan Ebel. It's addressed to someone named Shauna. Ebel writes first about how he's treated in prison, saying, "These cops blank with us big time over here." Then he goes on to accuse officers of messing with his phone calls and showers. Ebel writes, "I just fantasize about catching them out on the bricks and subjecting them to vicious torture and eventual murder. And that seems to get me through the days with a good degree of my sanity remaining intact." He next seems to respond to a previous letter from Shauna, again referencing corrections officers. Make sure you commit their full names and whatever other personal information you can glean from them, such as location of residency, to memory, and we'll go ahead and add that to our long list of fun. Ebel follows that up with a drawing of an evil smiley face. And that's not the only embellishment. After signing the letter, a god among men, Valhalla-bound, big bad evil Evan Ebel himself, he punctuates the postscript with a swastika. Teresa Marchetta.
7 News working breaking news from our partners at the Denver Post right now. There are new details as to why parolee Evan Ebel killed Colorado's prison chief and why Ebel fled all the way to Texas. 7 News reporter Mark Stewart is breaking this down. Mark?
And Mike, right off the top, we want to make it clear the information in the Denver Post comes from a source who has direct access to sealed court documents and to the investigation itself. Let's first look at the motivation. The source says the idea to recruit Evan Ebel to kill prison's chief Tom Clements was crafted when Ebel and the 211 gang's founder Benjamin Davis were both in prison. The Post reports Ebel was recruited as payback after he was threatened by another gang. The 211 crew protected him. Another key question that may be answered: why did Ebel head to Texas, where he eventually was killed in a shootout with police? The Post reports investigators think he was going to the home of a fellow 211 gang member who was on parole living south of Dallas. The source also says Ebel stayed at a safe house in Colorado Springs for 2 days after Clements' murder. And while we have a better idea as to how Ebel got involved, we still don't know exactly why Tom Clements became a target. Was it because he tried to break up prison gangs? We have a link to the Denver Post complete story on the 7 News app. Reporting live, Mark Stewart.
New information in the case of a man killed in this Texas shootout. He's believed to be responsible for 2 Colorado murders. 7 News Learning investigators found bomb-making materials in his car, as well as handwritten instructions to the home of Colorado Corrections Chief Tom Clements. And tonight we are hearing from a man who knew that suspect, Evan Ebel.
7 News reporter Amanda Koss discovering the 2 served prison terms at the same time and were in contact with each other.
You're in a cell the size of your bathroom.
Ryan Pettigrew describing administrative segregation. He remembers spending 8 years incarcerated in isolation.
It turns you into a monster. Spending the amount of time that me and Evan and others have spent in Hatzig, you get over 5 years and you're nuts.
Pettigrew says his friendship with Evan Ebel began inside the Colorado State Penitentiary.
Over the years, we just, passed messages back and forth and got to know each other.
And then you continued that friendship after both of you were out of prison.
Right. He called me around when he got out.
Ebel was released on parole in January.
How was he taking this transition out of prison and out of solitary?
Same way I did. His first week, he was a wreck. He was struggling.
Did he ever voice any of his plans with you?
Oh, absolutely not.
No indication of what was to come?
No, not at all. No way. In fact, I was completely caught off guard.
Pettigrew says his communication with Ebel ended in early March, close to 2 weeks before family man and part-time Domino's employee, Nate Leone, was robbed and killed during a delivery. Then the head of the state prison system, Tom Clements, shot to death after answering the door to a man disguised in a Domino's pizza delivery uniform.
Evan's a highly intelligent person, very disciplined. I think for anything, this was what he planned to do as his final get back at the system.
Amanda Kost, 7 News.
7 News reporter Russell Haythorne continues our live team coverage. And Russell, newly released documents detail what police found in Ebel's crashed Cadillac.
Right, Mike. This search warrant details all of the items found in that black Cadillac, including handwritten directions to the house of Tom Clements in Colorado Springs. Also today, the deputy who was shot by Evan Ebel tells us how he survived the Texas shootout.
Texas Deputy James Boyd's head is partially shaven, and he has several stitches where a bullet grazed his scalp.
At that point in time, I remember seeing the gun shoot off a number amount of times, and I could see the cartridges fly out, at which point I blacked out. I had no clue whether I was standing, sitting, laying, whatever.
After getting shot, the young Montague County deputy, only 27 years old, still had the presence of mind to radio for help.
Kind of halfway up, looking for my mic, trying to call out for help. That's about the time I noticed that, hey, I'm bleeding from the face. Something's not right here.
A search warrant details what investigators found inside the suspect's black Cadillac: bomb-making materials, zip ties, and blood-stained clothing. They also found a Domino's pizza shirt, a Domino's visor, and a delivery container that keeps pizza hot. Boyd credits a passerby for helping to save his life.
He pulled up. It was him and his mother. Got out, did exactly what he needed to, helped me out, got out over the radio, got me assistance, and did everything and more than what a normal average citizen would do.
Investigators also found surveillance cameras and DVDs inside this black Cadillac. The deputy says Ebel swerved in an odd way, and that's why he made that initial traffic stop. Investigators say if it hadn't been for that deputy making that stop, Ebel might still be on the run. In the newsroom, Russell Haythorne, 7 News.
Evan Ebel also a suspect in the death of Nate Leone, a Domino's pizza delivery driver. Denver police telling us today there is a strong connection between Leone's murder and Ebel, but they're not discussing the evidence. Tomorrow, family and friends will say a final goodbye to Leone. His funeral at the Flatirons Community Church in Lafayette is at 11 a.m. It's open to the public.
Only on 7 News, from grief to anger. The widow of Nate Leone opening up to 7 News about life after her husband's death. In a Call 7 Investigators exclusive, Teresa Marchetta sitting down with Katie Leone, who wants answers.
Her questions are the same ones we've been asking the Department of Corrections for weeks. But most of all, Katie Leone wants you to know her husband has a name, that he was so much more than a part-time pizza delivery driver.
I want in big letters, Nathan Colin Leone, the loving husband and father The 27-year-old man that got murdered for a T-shirt.
It's been 9 weeks since Nate Leone, devoted husband and father, was murdered.
No matter how tired he was, he would come home and he would walk right in that door and say, "Hello, my little ladies." And my kids would come running.
Explaining to her 4-year-old twins why Daddy won't be walking through the door anymore has been a source of daily torture for Katie Leone.
That is the only reason I get up every morning. That is the only thing I have left of my husband, that are the spitting image of their daddy.
Struggling to find a new normal in the week since her husband's murder has been nearly impossible. With his killer, Evan Ebel, still in the news, Katie endures hearing her husband referred to as the pizza guy, or worse, his murder overshadowed completely.
Evan Ebel has a name. Why should that monster have a name and my husband is just the pizza delivery man who worked 1 day a week delivering pizzas for extra money?
Nate's full-time job was with IBM.
I kept telling him that he didn't need to work at Domino's, and he kept telling me, "No, baby, we need the extra money." I begged him for years to quit it.
But on March 17th, Nate never made it home for the St. Patrick's Day celebration they had planned.
I just want the answers of why this happened and why nobody looked into it, why everybody just kind of dusted Nate off to the side.
She says Denver police confirm Ebel is her husband's killer, but the Department of Corrections has never explained how the high-risk parolee had the time and opportunity to do it.
Why it took him 4 days after he cut off his bracelet for somebody to go check his house when they should have been there within 30 minutes. Why they released him. Why nobody did their job by looking at the paperwork.
The anger, the errors, the coulda, woulda, shoulda that would have kept him here.
I showed Katie and her mom what we uncovered. The parole division admitting there were no policies in place for responding to alerts prior to the murders.
We've never heard this.
And that Ebel was flagged for intensive supervised probation, even assigned a gang unit officer with a smaller caseload for closer supervision.
And you hear this timeline of events.
Anger. Lots and lots of anger when I hear that.
Makes me sick. This could have been prevented.
Leone's mother-in-law upset by the glaring lack of accountability.
Yes, there were mistakes made. Oh, really? But those mistakes took her husband, my son-in-law, my grandchildren's dad. Who's going to stand up and say they're sorry?
Katie, has anyone been held accountable in your mind? And if not, who should be?
Anybody that had to do with Evan Ebel, anybody that had their name tied to him should be held accountable. The judge, DOC, parole officers, all of them, they're just as guilty.
There has to be something done different so some other family doesn't lose their Nate, because we lost ours.
Everybody's just stood in the shadows since all this happened. You know, why is it my family in mourning has to stand here in front of cameras and beg them, have to beg them to come to us? That's not right. It's not right. I mean, what do I tell my kids? Oh yeah, you know, Daddy was murdered because somebody didn't do their job.
And Katie says she's been told the state has immunity in her husband's death. She also says that Denver police have confirmed Ebel killed her husband, but can't close the case until the broader investigation is complete. I'm Call 7 investigator Teresa. 7 News uncovering new information now about this man now under arrest. Take a look at the mugshot we just received showing James Lohr with a much different look. Tattoos for eyebrows that read hard luck. Lohr, one of 2 men wanted in connection with the murder of Colorado Prison Chief Tom Clements. 7 News reporter Amanda Koss working this case all day. And Amanda, Lohr's possible involvement here, though, is still not clear.
And Teresa, 7 News confirming Lohr was in contact with Evan Ebel before and after the murder of Tom Clements. Now he's in the El Paso County Jail.
In the search for these 2 known associates of the 211 Crew prison gang, officers knew both men were likely on the move with a different look.
We make sure that all officers that are involved in that particular effort certainly have photographs, different types of photographs, etc., to make sure they might see different appearances of him, so to speak, over the course of time.
Here's James Lohr before and after his arrest in Colorado Springs. Officers first spotted Lohr when he drove away from a business on Platte Avenue. When they tried to pull him over, Lohr took off, then took officers on a chase. He ditched his vehicle a few blocks away at Bijou Street and Hancock Avenue, where he jumped out and ran for it. Captured in a neighborhood 2 hours after the chase started.
He was located and again surrendered and was taken into custody with that incident.
One arrested, the other still wanted. A be on the lookout order in effect for 31-year-old Thomas Gooley, considered armed, dangerous, with violent tendencies.
Are you operating as Ebel is still the only suspect?
Yes, Mr. Ebel is the only named suspect in this case at this point. Obviously, once he was identified as such, the questions that are unanswered still is, did he act alone? And if he did not, then what was his role and what were the others involved? What were their role as well?
And right now, most of the answers are coming from what investigators are still studying. Ebel digging into his past, his known associates, and others he was communicating with before and after his release from prison. Reporting live, Amanda Cost, 7 News.
7 News tracking a killer. The Department of Corrections releasing new information this afternoon about Evan Ebel's time in prison. Ebel believed to have killed 2 Colorado men last week, including the chief of the state corrections department.
We have a team of reporters digging into Ebel's past right now. 7 News reporter Amanda Cost investigating the woman accused of giving Ebel the gun used in at least one of the murders.
And we start with Mark Stewart, who's been digging through those newly released documents. Mark?
And Ann, this is the 25-page report outlining Evan Ebel's long history of troubles from his time in the state prison system. Right away, I want to highlight a case from 2005 where he threatened a correction officer, telling her that he would kill her if he ever saw her on the streets and that he would make her beg for her life. Just one of many cases. Other problems we discovered, and most noticeable, a series of assaults on other offenders and guards from over the years. In 2006, he slipped out of his handcuffs and told an officer that he would threaten to kill him and his family. In 2007, 33 feet of string along with a piece of metal was found in Ebel's shoes. And then in 2008, he made a phone call using another inmate's personal identification number. This report has also revealed some very interesting things about Ebel's past. First of all, right away, he is clearly identified as a member of the 211 gang. We also learned about his many tattoos, including a swastika on his chest. Finally, the document also reveals 2 alias names, one we may have heard before, Evil Ebel, as well as the name Dustin McKay. Reporting live tonight, Mark Stewart, 7 News.
A Commerce City woman now accused of giving Ebel the gun used to kill the state corrections chief, Stevie Vigil, appearing in court today. And 7 News reporter Amanda Koss, always investigating, digging into Vigil's alleged connection to this crime.
And we checked the visitor's log, and the documents Mark was just talking about. And Stevie Vigil is not listed among those who visited Ebel in prison.
The same gun used to kill state prison chief Tom Clements at his Monument home. Also used here in a Texas gunfight. The weapon in the hands of convicted felon Evan Ebel, similar to this, a 9mm Smith & Wesson. Investigators linked the crime scenes to the same gun based on bullet shell casings. And now this woman in custody, 22-year-old Stevie Vigil, escorted into an Arapahoe County courtroom. She's accused of buying the 9mm, then giving it to Ebel. 7 News checked and found Vigil has no previous arrests in state. Before this mugshot was taken, this. Online, we discovered a Model Muse profile in Vigil's name, created in January, where she's listed as a beginner model.
And it's unclear when Stevie Vigil first connected with Evan Ebel. Arrest documents in her case, they are sealed. Right now, she's being held on a $25,000 bond. Reporting live, Amanda Cost, 7 News.
TheDenverChannel.com uploading all of the documents obtained by 7 News today about Evan Ebel's time in prison. And you can read them all on your smartphone. Just download the 7
Two known associates of the gang the alleged killer belonged to are being called persons of interest in Tom Clements' killing. Now, we are going to show you their faces briefly and tell you their names, and the reason we're doing that is because police right now are actively looking for them, and frankly, police want and need your help. So these 2 men are on the loose and are considered armed and dangerous. That's 47-year-old James Lohr on the left, Thomas Gooley, 31 on the right. Again, they're considered armed and dangerous, so do not approach them if you do happen to see them. Stay safe. Call local authorities if you do see them. Joining me now with more on the investigation is Martin Savage. Why do police want these two guys?
Good evening, Anderson. It's because they believe that these two men have some important information pertaining to the case. Also because they believe these two men are extremely dangerous. You know, this case has continued to push forward. Even though the prime suspect is dead, authorities want to make sure that he was in fact the murderer. And they want to make sure there were no accomplices, and also make sure that if there were accomplices, that no...
We just lost connection with with Martin Savage. We'll try to reestablish it. I'm told he's back. So, hey, Martin, we just lost you. You're back now.
Sorry, I was saying that the reason that authorities have been so adamant is that they're interrogating a lot of people, particularly members of that gang you talked about, and the names of these persons of interest came up out of those interrogations. The BOLO, that's the Be on the Lookout, went out to warn the public, but more to warn authorities. These men are considered to be a real threat to any police officer that may come across them. They want them on their guard.
Do we know what their specific association with the alleged killer was?
That's the part where authorities really don't give you a lot of information. We know that all three men knew one another. We also know that they have a couple of things in common. They have a criminal or violent past. They're all members of that same gang. And this is most important, in the last weeks and months leading up to the murders, they all had contact. So the question is, were these men accomplices? When I asked that, that's when the authorities stopped talking.
All right. Martin, I appreciate the update.
Hey guys, welcome back. Another episode of Green Lit Gang TV. I appreciate you guys checking out the channel. Thank you guys for the love I'm getting on the last couple videos. It's going to jump right into it, man. I found this story yesterday, and surprised I hadn't come across my computer yet, man. Really interesting, and I actually remember hearing about this. I've seen some TV shows on this, so I'm really excited to bring it to you guys today. It's the story of Evan Ebel and the 211 crew, a Colorado-based white supremacist, basically a prison gang. Evan Ebel, kind of the main character in this, and the murder of Tom Clements and Nathan Leone. We're going to be talking about Nathan Leone, too, because he's kind of one that gets lost in a lot of this story. So this one took me a little bit longer. Spent a lot more time on this because of the story and the scope of this, and trying to break all this down to you guys. And then right when I thought I was done learning about this story, there's kind of like an alternate conspiracy theory about the death related to Tom Clements. And so you guys know, Tom Clements was basically the Bureau of Prisons, like the chief of Colorado prisons. I mean, he was the main guy. And he was murdered by Evan Ebel. And we're going to kind of get into this and, the story and everything like that. And just, man, there are so many layers of it, man. I'm reading through everything I wrote down and everything I've got up here, and it's just crazy. So, we're going to talk about Evan Ebel, the main character in this, the gentleman responsible for these murders. Evan Spencer Ebel was born August 16, 1984. He died March 21st, 2013 at 28 years old. Was a white supremacist and a follower of, and this is something that wasn't mentioned a lot in the media, so I'm kind of excited to bring it to you guys. A follower of Asatru, if I'm saying that right. And it's basically a belief in kind of like the earth, right? The earth, the air, the water that has great value to us. That we are part of the earth, but not its masters. Believe in a higher power, which appears to us in the multiplicity of nature and human life. And it's stated that it's actually older than Christianity beliefs. So I did see that he was a believer in that, and I thought that was interesting and something that I didn't see a lot of. So I want to tell you guys about it. He died March 21st, 2013 in a high-speed chase with Texas law enforcement 2 days after he supposedly had shot Tom Clements. He had driven down to Texas, and that's where he got in a high-speed chase and murdered. We're going to get into that why and how that all happened. So like I said, born in Colorado, Jack and Jody Eby. As a child, he had behavioral problems that stressed out his parents, eventually resulting in him being sent to several help camps for children with behavioral problems at the age of 12. And we know a lot about some of these camps, man, that were for 80s babies, especially 90s babies, though. I myself am a 90s kid. So there's actually a documentary on Netflix that just came out. I encourage you guys to check it out. It's about these kids that were sent off to these camps to basically, they were lying to the parents. They were supposed to be better than the kids when all it was just a camp where a lot of abuse happened. And it said that Evan Ebel went to some of these camps that were overseas. And however, the camps, it said that it strengthened Ebel's behavioral problems. So it didn't help, actually did the opposite. And he alleged to a friend that the instructors of some of his camps were abusing the children. So he wasn't just sent to one and came back 3 months later. He was sent to multiple in his childhood. It said a lot of his time was spent with his father, pretty well-to-do guy that was involved in the oil business. In 2003, when he was 18, he was arrested for holding an acquaintance at gunpoint and stealing his wallet. He was also later charged for committing 2 other armed robberies and sentenced to 8 years in prison in 2005. And in prison, he gained the nickname Evil Ebel, which I thought was interesting, for his behavior, and spent a majority of his, now remember this, he spent a majority of his sentence in solitary confinement, which caused his father to become concerned about the damage it was reportedly doing to him, even testifying to the Colorado General Assembly about basically what happened to his son, and stated that basically from jump, he was worried about his kid. He was worried about his kid. And it came out, too, that Jack Ebel, Evan's father, was friends with Colorado Governor John Hickenlooper. Ebel had become associated with the white supremacist prison gang called the 211 Crew, who members, and kind of how the 211 Crew is a lot smaller prison gang, right? So my last video, we talked about the Aryan Knights. This one, we're talking about the 211 Crew, a little bit smaller, not as well known. I read something where maybe like 1,000 total members. Maybe. I feel like that number's a little high. I feel like it might be smaller than that. But they first gained some notoriety in 1997 for killing the death of an African-American immigrant. Let me get that right. An African-American immigrant waiting for a bus. The gang offered him sanctuary after he was threatened by a rival. Now, okay. I don't want to misconstrue what I said. That's how they got famous. They killed an African-American immigrant waiting for a bus. Going back to Evan Ebel, the 211 Crew offered him sanctuary after he was threatened by another rival prison gang. Later in 2006, he was, and this is just talking all about his prison experience and times he spent in and out. In 2006, he was disciplined for smearing feces on his cell wall and punching an inmate and a prison guard, also threatening to kill the prison guard and his family. 2 years later, after a plea deal, Ebel pleaded guilty to all the resulting charges that came of attacking the prison guard, and he was sentenced to an additional 4 years that were to be served after his original 8-year sentence. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that's called consecutive, not concurrent. I think consecutive is you got to do one, then you got to do the other. When they run them concurrent, if you hear that, they're running them all together, which is better. You want your stuff to run concurrently. Consecutive means one starts, you got to finish that, then the next one starts. And again, if I'm not saying that right, feel free to comment down below. Ebel pleaded guilty to the resulting charges an additional 4 years. However, on January 28, 2013, now check this out. He was suddenly released from prison 4 years early after prison officials saw his court records but failed to notice that the plea deal involved an extended sentence, which just blows my mind. I've heard of people getting accidentally released. I've heard of glitches in the system, but I don't necessarily believe that they failed to notice that the plea deal involved what? That's crazy. That's just I don't know. I made sure I read that right, and I did. I don't know. So, the Bureau of Prisons, the new chief, Tom Clements, like we were talking about. Basically, what ends up happening is 58-year-old Tom Clements, right? He's the one that initiated a lot of this getting people out of solitary confinement. So over the last, I don't know, 10, 20, 25 years, there's been a lot more coming out about the dangers of solitary confinement. Okay. And what that can do to a person's mind. Okay. And Evan Ebel is someone that, he had 3 felony charges: menacing, robbery, assault, another assault charge for when he assaulted the guard, and it was the second stretch in prison. And was in solitary confinement for much of his sentence. He was deemed too great a risk to be put with other inmates. He spent time in isolation at boot camps as a kid, and I guess those camps, when I said overseas, they were in the island of Samoa. So he did a lot of hard time. And a lot of those things made it worse. And this is what I talked about, that he had a lot of anger towards authority. He never liked being told what to do, and his time in isolation really only compacted that. Everything about his life was dictated down to the minute, and that really frustrated him. This is a spokesperson, and some of these things I'm reading, right? And then it said, ironically, Tom Clements, the man that Evan Ebel murdered and I will say that, he murdered Tom Clements on his doorstep. The man he's accused of killing was a champion of reducing solitary confinement for prisoners. One thing authorities might never know about Ebel is simply, why did he do it? His alleged actions might not have clear logic, but they have like a clear trajectory, right? He was mad. He didn't like authority. He spent a lot of time in solitary confinement and trying to figure out who he's mad at, why he's mad at. He was an ex-con. He spent years in solitary confinement. He was deemed too much of a risk. Angry, violent. Didn't want to accept help. And, Colorado Governor John Hickenlooper said this from the beginning, talking about Evan Ebel's dad, right? He said from the beginning, his son just seemed to have a bad streak, a streak of cruelty and anger, right? He went on to say they did everything they could. They tried. They worked with Evan again and again, but to no avail. And that's what the governor said, because like I said, remember, the governor's friends with Evan Ebel's dad. Okay? So going back to the Clements thing, he was a proponent for getting rid of, not really getting rid of, but getting down solitary confinement. Okay? They were trying to he had basically said that when Clements came in, that he had gotten the solitary confinement population down by like 47%. And it's kind of interesting in this. It's interesting because he comes from kind of an affluent background a little bit, but it just seems like this family just didn't have time for him either. And I'm not making an excuse for this. What he did was awful. And we'll get to what he did with Leon, the other gentleman in this story. Nathan Leon, that's a really sad story. And this is kind of where I really parted with him. But I want to focus on kind of the background with Evan Ebel's background, Tom Clements. Just kind of do this one thing at a time with you guys. So, people kind of saw this coming with Evan Ebel, right? But Clements didn't. Clements wanted to work with people, wanted to help people get out of solitary confinement, wanted to make a change, thought that just locking people up wasn't the way. Well, on the evening of March 19th, 2013, 50-year-old Tom Clements answered the doorbell of his Monument home and was confronted by a parolee absconder named Evan Ebel. The same son of a friend the governor had mentioned, released from Ad Seg just 7 weeks earlier. Ebel had already killed Nathan Leon, that was the other gentleman we were going to talk about, a pizza delivery driver for Domino's, who only, as you saw in that clip with his wife talking to the news, he only worked 1 day a week, and she had begged him to stop working for Domino's. They didn't need the extra money. Evan Ebel killed Nathan Leon for his uniform. He shot Nathan Leon, whose body was discovered by someone who was flying model airplanes. They found his body. And and it was horrible. And then Evan Ebel drove down. He fatally shot Clements with a 9mm handgun and fled. Like I said, he was only to be killed himself 2 days later with a shootout with Texas authorities. Talks about, in the article I read, almost 18 months later, many questions of the death remain unanswered. Some people, and this is kind of where we're starting getting into it, right? So, to recap, Evan Ebel, kind of a career criminal. Has support, but not so much. Spent time in isolation as a kid, isolation in his couple prison stints, had a violent history. Neighbors talked about him being violent. Even when the governor talks about being friends with Evan Ebel's dad, he said, man, the kid had something wrong with him. Okay? Some people saw this coming. His target, Tom Clements, the prison chief, head of all this stuff, trying to bring reform, trying to get down the solitary confinement population, is successful in it. Part of the reason Evan Ebel is released is, well, apparently they messed up his paperwork and he was released early, but also probably because they were trimming down the AdSeg community. They were getting people out. They were trying to reform, trying to help. He'd only been out 7 weeks when he killed Leon and Clements. That's crazy. He'd only been out 7 weeks. So, like I said, there's a lot of people, though, that have unanswered questions with this. Is why did Ebel do this? Because he kills these two people, drives to Texas, gets in a shootout, because by the time he kills these two people, there's a nationwide manhunt going on for him, right? After he's done killing these people, they get an idea who it is. He's off to Texas. Texas, the officers see him. You see it in that video. Horrible crash, burn, shootout, just like a movie. Well, then people start asking questions. People start digging, right? Okay, what's going on with this? So, some people said, well, it's a gang-ordered assassination from the 211 crew. Citing unnamed sources, the Denver Post has suggested that he may have had some sort of like debt that he needed to pay the gang back with, so that's why they sent him down there. We're going to get into that in a minute, okay? Now, how did he get the gun? The 9mm came from a woman named Stevie Vigil, the young woman who supplied Ebel with his gun, okay? At the time, initially, she was the only one charged in the case besides Ebel, who obviously was murdered, okay? Now, we're going to talk about two other gentlemen, the 211 crew, okay? White Supremacist gang was formed in 1995 at the Denver County Jail by a person named Benjamin Davis, a career criminal. Like I said, it has up to about 1,000 members. It's affiliated with Nazi prison gangs. But it doesn't confirm the link between like other bigger white-based prison gangs. It doesn't say there's a confirmed link between the Aryan Brotherhood or the Aryan Brotherhood of Texas. Because remember, he ended up in Texas, so they're not 100% sure. But law enforcement officials had said that even after he died and was wounded in a shootout with Texas police officers and sheriff's deputies northwest of Dallas on March 21st, they couldn't say that he wasn't acting on orders of leaders of the 211 crew. Now, at the same time this crash and Evan Ebel gets a shootout that kills himself, they then begin linking two other members of the 211 crew to this situation who were known because they're going through his phone records. They're looking at what he's done in the previous weeks, okay, leading up to these killings. He'd been in contact with 47-year-old James Lohr and 31-year-old Thomas Gu Lee. They named them persons of interest, but stopped short of saying they were suspects in the case. But they were also both wanted for warrants for unrelated crimes. These guys are active gang members. These guys get out. They do not stop doing what they're doing just because they're not behind bars anymore. No one's turning their life around. No one's finding God here. These guys are going out, and they're going out to do what they do, and they're going out to get down. So a lieutenant comes out, okay, for the El Paso County Sheriff's Office, and he says, 211 is still very much on the table. Lieutenant Kramer says this. The only thing we have ruled out is that this was random. A former corrections officer said Thursday that after Mr. Clements' killing, prison officials warned officers not to wear their uniforms to and from work because of concerns that the 211 gang, might target them. The former officer did not want to be identified for fear of retaliation. So even guys talking to the media didn't want to be identified. From the beginning, untangling the motives behind Mr. Clements' killing has been laced with complexities. Even trying to tell this story is complex. Less than 2 weeks after he was killed, now check this out, a second Kaufman County prosecutor was shot to death in Texas, stirring more speculation about ties to white supremacy gangs. The district attorney's office has been involved in an investigation of the Aryan Brotherhood of Texas prison gang. Remember I said I couldn't for sure tie in the 211 crew, Colorado, the ABT, but you're kind of seeing some things. But since then, the authorities have broadened the investigation to include other possible theories. Experts on hate groups who track the activities of prison gangs said that the 211 crew was not known to have any connections to the Aryan Brotherhood or other white supremacist gangs in the States. Ebel shot his victims, either reportedly execution style with a 9mm Smith & Wesson handgun, given to him by Stevie Vigil. Stevie Vigil got 27 months for providing the gun to Evan Ebel, in case you guys were wondering. Wanted to kind of put a bow on that one for you. Okay? Talks more about him getting raised, right? He was raised primarily by his father, Jack, Applewood, Knowles Drive in Lakewood, Colorado. Dad was a prominent figure, an oil and gas lawyer, so they had money. He also had a sister. And I will say this for sake of his dad. His dad tried to help his son. In 2011, he testified before Colorado's state legislature regarding his son's solitary confinement. He spoke of his son's mental illness and argued that people with conditions like this should not be subjected to solitary confinement. He said, "We know a different person." A more nuanced picture of Ebel likewise emerges from his mother's account. So I do want to talk about this with his mother. She started a blog. Initially, for Ebel lost a sister, her 16-year-old daughter who died in a car accident in 2004. But now she dedicates the site to her son as well. According to his mom, Ebel's life took a sharp turn after his sister's death. Evan drifted into a dark period. He was struggling prior, but that event threw him over the edge. They were 3 years apart. He was a protective big brother, and in this case, was unable to protect her, she wrote. His life deteriorated after that, and he just became numb and lost his direction altogether. Between using drugs and committing crimes, he was soon put in prison for 8 long years. Mom and Dad kept in close contact, sending letters, cards, and visiting their son when they could. He got in shape in prison, became an avid reader, and an advocate against using substances, she said. She talked about the bright moments in his childhood, full of spunk, energy. Wasn't afraid of anyone, and he loved animals. Reading that's sad, man. I don't care what anybody says. That's sad because I don't know about any of you that have struggled with addiction or been locked up, but you have those moments. You know, some of you out there haven't maybe talked to your mom and dad in years, and that's sad. I'm on the other end. I can't say anything. My mom and dad are great. My mom and dad were there for me. But I remember my mom and dad coming to visit me wherever I was at. Just leave it at that. Wherever I was at, right? And addiction does change people. And I can talk about it a little bit. This is an extreme case, and I'm not making him the victim. I want to say that right now. What he did was awful. He killed the pizza delivery guy that was a family guy, loved his kids, worked 1 day a week to try to provide. Buck that. That's horrible. I have zero sympathy for what Evan Ebel did to those people. And Tom Clements murdering him at his home, who was trying to help people get out of solitary confinement, who, from what I read about him, wasn't just lock him up and throw away the key. But I'm just trying to give you a background. I'm trying to tell the story in a better light. Because I could come on here and just read the crime, right, and put the pictures up. But I want to go a little more in depth. I had to read a lot of articles about this stuff, man. I gave you the history, about what, Evan Ebel had been through with his sister. But I will say this. Sister died in 2004. It said that I read that back in 2003, he actually pulled a gun out on a group of people watching a Denver Broncos game at a Houghton, Lakewood, Colorado. So you can't say that he was just great before his sister's death and then when she died, he went to hell, because this is pulling out a gun on a group of people a full year before she passed away. He was convicted of firearms charges but served no time at that time. And then he began, a year later, attempted armed robberies. 2007, he assaults the prison guard, and just goes from there. He had initially first entered the state prison system when he was barely 20. That's when he was doing the 8 years for the crime binge and everything he went on. But this is where I really want you guys to comment, because we talked about his dad speaking publicly about segregation, solitary confinement. I myself have never been in solitary confinement. If any of you have, please comment down below. If any of you know family members that have and have been changed negatively because of it, please comment down below. If you have an opinion on solitary confinement, please comment down below. I want to hear it. I want to read it. I try to get back to everybody on this stuff. Kind of going back to the 211 crew, Thomas Lee, the reason they were tying him in is he had talked to Evan Ebel before the crime and after the crime. He had also tried to burglarize a corrections officer's house. That was really interesting. So there is some thought that maybe, there's more to this. And I found it interesting. It said, actually, that the founder, Benjamin Davis, of the 211 crew, he actually committed suicide. He actually killed himself, which I thought was interesting as well. So it just kind of goes to show you, man, it's a sad life, man. And I see what became of Evan Ebel, and I just, I don't really know what to think. It's one of those things that's just, man, it's messed up. But even the direct ties to maybe the other prison gangs, I mean, or the district attorney in Texas that was killed, I don't really know what to think, because I really don't know what to say. I really, man, it makes you think. It makes you think. I know that. I don't really know. I think there is some tied in. Now, really quick, I will go over this. This was the last theory. When I said they threw in a wrench at the end, I really mean a wrench in the end. It's what's called the Saudi theory. There was... This is crazy. I can't believe I read this. There was an Arabian prisoner locked up in a max security in Colorado. This was an early theory. People speculated that Saudi national Hamadan al-Turki was in some way linked to the shooting. Clements had recently denied al-Turki's request to serve the remainder of his 8-year sentence in Saudi Arabia, and al-Turki was known to have links with known terrorist sympathizer Anwar al-Awlaki. I will say this, I do not believe that theory. I believe the theory that Evan Ebel was angry. And again, I don't like to do too much of an opinion on this, but I will say this much. I believe he was angry. I believe he had enough information from certain gang members, and I believe he acted on that information. I believe that solitary confinement took an already troubled person that had mental illness, like his dad said, and amplified everything times 1,000. And what you got when you released him 7 weeks before these murders was a monster. A monster who was responsible for his own crimes and should be held accountable, and unfortunately wasn't able to get brought to justice because he got in a shootout and his life was taken. But nonetheless, he should not be let off the hook. I'm not sympathizing with him, but I do like to look into these. This is half the reason I made this channel, for stories like this, because you want to understand why. And there are parts of these stories where these people have normal lives, successful parents, people that love them, people that visited them, was trying to get better, and he got swallowed up, and he made a choice, and he made a few choices. He made a few bad choices that turned into one ultimate choice where he chose to take multiple lives. So anyway, there you guys have it. I encourage you guys to do your own research on this, man. Do your own research on this. Even the shootout with police, man. He was driving through Wise County. He was pulled over by Deputy James Boyd, whom he shot and wounded in the head before fleeing. Then a car chase ensued, with Ebel firing out of his window at pursuing officers. It's like some Grand Theft Auto stuff. Eventually, he accidentally smashed his car into a semi-truck to which he got out and continued firing at officers. He was then shot and critically wounded by them, later being taken to a local hospital where he died. It's just nuts. And, you know, heads rolled after this, man. The head of their parole board in Colorado was fired. Their whole system was gone over. Kind of like the last story we talked about and up there in Idaho. People were held accountable, man. Big time. Man. When stuff like this happens, you know, the leader of the prisons, the chief of prison staff, I mean, whatever you want to call him, when stuff like that happens, man, people are gonna lose their jobs. So anyway, there you guys have it. A little bit of a longer talk. I know I rambled a little bit. You guys have no idea how much I appreciate you guys checking out these videos. It means a lot. Till next time, peace out.